Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to another lecture of logistics management. I am your host, Dr. Khurram, and we are going to discuss various aspects of logistics management. Along the course, we have in the last lecture, in fact, we discussed a very interesting area in logistics management. We found out that logistics management is somehow in between marketing and productions, and there are many overlapping activities in which overlapping activities between logistics and marketing, and as well as overlapping activities between production and logistics management. So basically, from the point of contact with the customer to the point of production of the product, the link is through logistics management. So it is very important to either categorize these activities in various departments. In fact, when we look at the whole supply chain, then the supply chain, all of these activities are included under the supply chain. Now, the main thing is, we also discussed the logistics management under the perspective of manufacturing, along with the examples, with the perspective of manufacturing industries, with the perspective of service industries, with perspective of military and non-for-profit organizations. And we found out that logistics actually is a very significant part of all of these types of industries and in areas. Even it was part of a military. We also gave an example for that. Now, we also discussed the scope of logistics management in a logistics management triangle, where we discussed that there were inventory decisions or transport decisions or location strategy to basically to target a specific level of customer satisfaction. Now, this was basically covered in the last lecture. In the current lecture, we would take it one step further, and we would be discussing logistics and supply chain strategy and planning. Now, I would start with an example from a movie. I hope you've seen it, Alice in Wonderland. When Alice walks on that road and asks a cat over there that where do I have to go now? And the cat answers, it depends on where you want to go. Now, this is an interesting statement also written on the slide. So if you don't know where you want to go, then any path will do, right? So you have to decide exactly where you have to go, and this is all about the strategy. Now, corporate strategy is the process whereby plans are formulated of positioning a firm in to meet its specific objectives. Objectives can be different. Objectives can be, for example, profit orientation, profit maximization. Objectives can be gaining the market share. Objective can be social. Objective can be just, for example, survival of a firm. When a foreign competition comes in a domestic environment, then the local industry, the smaller industry, does not have any other target other than to survive. Right? So if an industry is expanding, its target is market share. For example, when valves came into Pakistan, Yummy 36 and Polka wanted to survive. On the other hand, Valve's objective was to expand. You see, so to gain more market share. There can be, for example, social context also of the strategy. There can be profit orientation also for a strategy. So basically, while formulating a strategy, the overall strategy, plans are formulated, and for these there is a process of visioning, because in certain cases very counterintuitive, unheard of and unconventional strategies are considered. Now, why it is important? Because the main thing is the strategy formulation begins with defining a corporate strategy as a whole. We're not talking, I'm taking you towards logistics strategy, the strategy for the Department of Logistics. But for that, we have to look at the broader perspective first. First, there is corporate strategy. Corporate strategy can be based on any type of objective of a firm. When we come to examples, you would understand that more. Now, it can be dependent on any type of objective of a firm. As I said, it can be social or market share, increase in market share. It can be, for example, just basic survival or profit maximization. So, the process of defining the strategy involves basically assessing the strengths and weaknesses of the four major components of the whole corporation: its customers, its suppliers, its competitors, and the company itself. right? So these four major components are to be considered while formulating a strategy. Now, while these four major components, basically there is an internal environment of the company itself, and there is an external environment. In the external environment, there are the firm's suppliers, there are firm's customers, and there are firm's competitors. And in the internal environment, it is the firm or corporation itself. Now, while formulating this overall strategy, the firm must consider these four components, its external as well as internal environment. While considering that strategy, the basic visioning process might be very abstract. In that process, firms might start visioning, give strategies which are very, you can say, unheard of or counterintuitive. But strategies are put forth, and based on that visioning process, strategies are defined. Strategies are finalized. We have an example over here. For example, General Electric, its strategy is to be number one or two in each market wherever it sells its goods and services. So it would leave any market wherever it is number 3 and onwards. So unless it is number 1 or number 2, it would stay in that market, otherwise it would leave that market. That is one of the strategies. That can be one of the strategies. Hewlett and Packard, that its strategy is to serve the scientific community. Again, and a vision, an objective. Now IBM is to remain an effective competitor. Very basic. Now you see, these are three different sort of aspects. These are different, they show different perspectives of how the firm looks at itself. It looks at how it looks at its customers, how it looks at its suppliers or its competitors, and itself. Those four major components. So that perception actually reflects in these visions that the firms have. Now, based on these broad goals, now the broad goals that we define then need to be converted to some definite workable plans. Again, these workable plans are dependent upon the firm's external and internal environment. Its external environment includes its suppliers, its competitors, and its customers. And internal environment is the resources that the firm has itself. Whether the firm is capable of achieving that goal, or whether the firm is capable of achieving that target or objective that it has defined. So whenever the whole strategy is formulated based on the initial objectives, the broader goals and objectives that you need to stay number 2 or number 1 or number 2 in a market, otherwise you would leave that market. So that is a very broad perspective. But then narrowing it down, you need to come to the workable plans. Now, for example, there was, while considering, let's talk about the external and internal environment right now. Now, Xerox copyright patent was expiring. That would automatically mean that other firms could copy the similar machines and produce that in the market. Now, you see, there is a threat from the competitors. Now, it has to redefine its strategy. Now, they defined their strategy to be number 1 in the field service. Now, their original niche was that specific copier that they had. They could sell that, for example, any copier XYZ, that they had that technology and they had patents and copyrights to that technology, and no one could use that. As long as that patent was alive, they could use it. But when that patent expired, other people can come into the business. Now, when there is a threat from the competition, the other people are coming in. So what they do is, they, for example, plan to be number 1 in the service provision. You see, a workable plan. Now, an idea based on the external and internal environment, because the environment has changed, so their original plan has changed. Now, then there is, for example, Starkist Food. Now, it wanted to be a dominant banker in tuna business. Tuna fish is in high demand in certain areas, so their whole strategy was that they could pack as much as tuna fish that could come in from their suppliers, their subcontracted ships, and from their own fleets. So they wanted to pack all that and expand in that sense. That was their business strategy. Now, these corporate strategies, why I gave this last example, I would come to that. Now, these corporate strategies are then converted into functional areas, strategies of the functional area. So once the strategy has been formulated, we need to come to functional areas: finance, marketing, production, and logistics. Now, they formulate their own strategies. So in just the last example that I discussed, the Starkist Foods, When the corporate strategy has been defined that they want to be the dominant packer, the packing company of tuna fish products, tuna fish business. So in the tuna fish business, whatever the quantity of tuna fish they could acquire either from their subcontracted ships or from their own fleet, they wanted to pack those, and they wanted that their target was that we pack and expand in the market. Based on that, when we talk about the functional areas, then the strategies have to be redefined at all the levels, from finance to marketing, from at inventory or logistics level to production level. So strategies have to be redefined at all the levels. Specifically when we come to logistics, then that would mean that if they want to pack each and every set of tuna fish that they acquire, that would automatically mean that the logistics strategy would have to be redefined, because transportation of such a huge quantity, the quantity has increased. The storage facility has to be reconsidered, that how do they store it, and the transportation from that storage facility to the retailer, again another strategy required for that. And if we talk about the storage only, what do they do with it? Because if there are a specific set of warehouses that they have and they store in those cold storages or warehouses, if the quantity is coming in with a huge inflow now, what do they do with it? So actually what they planned in those times was that since tuna fish was in high demand is in high demand in those regions, so people like to store it when the prices go down, so they put sales on it. This was the inventory strategy that how they handled it. So you see, the point is that when a corporate strategy is defined, that corporate strategy is converted into workable strategies of different functional areas. So, for example, and another aspect of this same how it is converted into workable areas and what kind of strategies organizations are following, just to give you a few other examples. Now, when we are defining a strategy for, you can say, logistics based on the strategy of the corporation, the same creative process is also required for defining a strategy of logistics. Almost the same creative process is required. We have certain limitations. When the corporate strategy has been defined, then the strategy of the functional area, specifically when we're talking about logistics management, have to be based on that basic corporate strategy. Now, for example, another an office machine business company planned to revamp its strategy. Initially, it had its service personnel. Now, whenever there was a complaint from its customers that your machine has gone out of order, the service personnel would run around the whole city and the whole region fixing those machines. But that actually had a lot of logistics costs. Now, in order to, this is not exactly Xerox, some other company, but if you want to compete, when they plan to when they want to increase the greater customer service level, now what do? Either you hire more service personnel who would be running around, more experts, more engineers who would be running around fixing your machines, or you plan something else. Now, how they replan is, the logistics strategy was replanned to ensure that whenever there is a complaint about a machine, let's not send an engineer over there to fix that machine. Keep the engineers at a certain central location where engineers can fix the machine. You can go and bring that machine back over here to fix it. And since the corporate strategy was to increase the customer service level also, what you do is you give them a replacement machine. You go, you put them a replacement machine in their office, you pick up their machine, bring it to your service center, you fix it, and once the machine has been fixed, it can be returned. Based on this strategy now this was not just the corporate strategy, it was the logistics department strategy also. Now, based on this strategy, what they did was that they actually increased the customer service level on one end, then they also reduce their costs, because now the engineers don't have to run along at different places. They can fix the machines in a central location in their office, right? And another important thing, that not just that cost, because now the engineers are available while running around, there is also the time value of cost also, because the time of the engineer is spent running around. But when he's in office, they can dedicatedly work on different machines which are out of order. So the point is that such a creative process is also required for functional level strategies, the similar creative process which is required for the corporate level strategies. Then another American hospital supply company, what they did was that they established terminals in every customer's office. For example, every hospital or every clinic. Now their terminals were like sales point of sales. So automatically when the supplies were going down, the inventories were going down in those point of sales, they would order more quantity of whatever items that they were supplying. So basically another creative strategy in which you reach the customer and you are there with the customer, and when the quantity is short or whenever they need more, they would automatically place the order. So another way of satisfying your customers, and another creative strategy in which you can see that the functional area has been very creative in that. Now this is somehow a schematic diagram representing that. First of all, you look at the corporate strategic plan. Now that corporate strategic plan is dependent on certain things, which are basically the external factors which I talked about. These are economic, regulatory, technological, competitive, and you can also write down suppliers and customers and all those areas. Economic actually includes each and everything. Now these external environments, for example, are directly affecting the corporate strategic plan. This corporate strategic plan actually goes down to functional strategic plans. Each functional area, manufacturing, logistics, marketing and finance, plan their own strategy. Manufacturing and logistics are obviously directly linked to each other, as we discussed in the last lecture, and they are also directly linked to marketing as well, and the finance is getting feed from them as well as from the marketing. I guess you understand this schematic diagram. Now let us come to an example. While talking about economic and regulatory activities, there are so many telecom companies in Pakistan. Let's come to a domestic example. For example, Telenor, Ufone, Mobilink, Warid. Very recently, the process of issuance of SIM has been changed. Previously, you could just go and buy a SIM off the shelf, a SIM for the connection, for the telephone connection, for the mobile connection actually. You could just go and pay a sum of like 250 and 300 rupees and get a SIM. They collected your ID card. People usually had like 5 or 6 or 10 even 10 SIMs at one single identity card. And very often people would not buy SIMs at their own identity cards. People would buy SIMs at somebody else's national ID. Now, the regulatory environment and economic environment changed. What happened was that with the influx of terrorism and certain issues like that, with the lack of traceability, the government wanted that the SIM should be traceable. Whenever you make a call, people would know that who called. The government would know who called from that number. So they actually pushed the PTA or the main authority, regulatory authority in Pakistan, to push the telecom sector to ensure that there are certain limitations, that not a single individual can hold a maximum of 3 or 5 SIMs. The rest of them should be cancelled, number one. Number two was that for each telecom service you can have one, not more than 2, something like that. There were certain regulations. And then the second step where they took them was that each SIM should be biometrically verified. Now that is a difficult task. Biometrically verified would mean that each SIM should be connected to thumb impression of the person in whose name that SIM has been issued. Otherwise that SIM would be blocked. Now with that, a whole corporate strategy has to be defined, because not every customer would be easily willing to go to a service center which is so crowded to put in a thumb impression for that specific SIM, because rest of the SIMs would be blocked. So everybody was worried that their SIM should be verified somehow. So a whole corporate strategy, this is actually a change management system. Now, however they defined that, the corporate strategy was to access to the customer somehow and get every SIM that they wanted to keep as to be verified by a biometric. Now then comes down to the functional level strategies. Marketing started its advertisement, production started its, they revamped their customer service points. Now the interesting thing was that not every area was approachable. So what they did was they picked up their biometric machines and they went to the universities, they went to the offices, they went to colleges, they went to far-flung areas carrying those biometric machines. They installed their mobile facility running around the village areas and rural areas so that people can come and verify those. Different telecom organizations did that. So that was again going down to logistics strategy. So to achieve, when the external environment changed, the corporate strategy had to be defined. Now based on that corporate strategy, the functional area strategy had to be redefined. So you see, this is how the corporate strategy moves down from the external environment. When the environment, external or internal, changes, the corporate strategy is defined, and that based on that corporate strategy, you reach the functional area strategies are defined. Just like in this example, we saw that we gave a real life example of very recent example of telecom sector where they had to revamp their whole strategy to ensure that their customers are not lost. Maybe they defined their strategy not to lose a single customer who wanted to keep a SIM of your company. For example, if I talk about Uphone, my strategy would be not to let go of a single Uphone customer who wants to have a SIM of Uphone. Many people don't like to change numbers, so they want those numbers verified. So in that sense, whoever approaches them first that okay, you can keep the number as soon as you verify it, then that would be very easy for them. And based on that, the whole functional area strategies of marketing and finance and logistics and manufacturing and production and whatever, the IT services department, whichever department, so the whole strategy is defined based on that. Now basically the logistics strategy, there are three broad objectives of logistics strategy. These are cost reduction, capital reduction, and service improvement. We would discuss them one by one. Now they are also basically, they are all associated with the return on logistic asset. This is not ROLA, not the Pakistani ROLA, but it is return on logistic asset. We would get a formula and stuff like that for it, but what we need to do is we need to go through them individually. So the objectives, the main objectives as we discussed earlier, that while defining the corporate strategy, it is basically the objective that is being approached. The objective can be increase in market share, the objective can be increase in profit maximization, the objective can be social, the objective can be survival. So those are the basic objectives based on which the corporate strategy is defined. When we come to logistics strategy, the functional area strategy, the functional area strategy can be broadly based on these three main objectives. One is cost reduction, the second one is capital reduction, the third one is service improvement. And how we measure these objectives is through return on logistics asset, but we would come to that, don't worry about it. So what would be cost reduction strategy when we are focusing on cost reduction? Cost reduction is reducing the variable cost actually. Minimize cost, its aim would be to minimize the cost of, in terms of logistics, the movement and storage. While we are talking about minimizing, we discussed in earlier lectures that the level of the cost incurred in logistics is directly related to the level of customer service we are targeting. Higher level of customer service would require higher logistics cost. So while we are focusing on a specific cost reduction strategy, that would require the customer service levels to be held constant. So if we are targeting this specific level of customer service levels, for example level 4, let's call it, give it a number, level 4 or level A. So if we are targeting that level, then we see all the means and mechanisms of for example, all the ways in which we can minimize the movement and storage of the whole logistics process, movement and storage in the whole logistics process. So we need to hold the customer service levels constant. In this, we also discuss evaluating alternative routes and, for example, different various warehousing locations, different means of transportation, different types of warehousing, public or private warehousing. We discuss various aspects. Basically, the aim is to reduce the logistics cost, to minimize the cost of transporting goods and services, transporting and storing goods and services at a specific level of customer satisfaction. Then there is capital reduction. Capital reduction strategy would be to minimize the level of investment in logistics system. For example, if you might also avoid warehousing and you can ship directly to the customer. You produce and you ship to the customers. You can choose between, for example, public and private warehouses. You do not, not between public and private warehouse, I mean that you do not choose on private warehouse, because that would be expensive and public warehouse would be cheaper. So you switch between those. And then you can also ensure just-in-time inventory. I hope you have heard of just-in-time inventory. You keep the bare minimum levels, and actually whenever the thing is required, it is delivered, and it is not required to be stored, or no need of larger warehouses. Then it is also a possibility that logistics activities, transport and storing activities are outsourced to some other firm. That would also be to minimize the level of investment. This of course, all these would result into increase in the variable costs, but there would also be an increase, there might be an increase in return on investments. The point is that since you are planning to minimize the investment in the logistics system, that would mean that the returns to that minimum investment that you're doing would be greater, of course. So that is why there would be increase in variable costs, but also an increase in return on investments. So then the last is service improvement. Service improvement can be an objective in terms of you are targeting maximum customer satisfaction. As we have discussed earlier, that with targeting higher level of customer satisfaction, the costs of logistics department would obviously increase, because I have given you an example earlier, because one of an example of higher level of customer satisfaction can be by Domino's Pizza. I have heard of their strategies as their customer service goals to be 30 minutes or free. For example, there are cases in which they do not deliver in 30 minutes, they would give you a certain level of discount in certain countries. So that is a very high level of customer satisfaction, because when I place an order, I would expect that pizza to be delivered to my place where I ordered it for, to the location in 30 minutes, in less than 30 minutes. So if it is not delivered, that would mean whatever the penalty that is decided. So the whole logistics systems have to be very efficient so that the product is delivered within the defined time frame, you see. So that is a certain level of customer satisfaction, a higher level of customer satisfaction that have been targeted. Now, based on that, you cannot avoid, you cannot focus on, you can say, decrease in reduction in investment, because you would have to invest in those delivery systems through which that item is delivered. So if you target that maximum level of customer satisfaction, your cost will automatically increase. They are directly related to each other. Now, so if the strategy is, if the objective of the logistics department is to improve the service to the customer, then the cost would increase. The previous two were like focused on decreasing the cost. But once we define the customer service level, the cost, if we are at, for example, lower level right now and we increase the customer service level, the cost would automatically increase. But at that cost, then we might follow cost reduction strategy and minimal investment strategies. Now, there is an example of Parker Hannifin, which is a producer of seals and O-rings. There was an interesting case study in that. One of the customers, one of the representative of the customers, showed a Parker's sale agent two invoices of the same type of product, but the prices of the competitor's price was 8% less than Parker's price. But then that that agent, not the salesperson, but the agent of the customer, offered an option They said that if Parker and Hanfin could establish an inventory stocking point near a certain region in which they needed the service with some additional value added services, then they would still order to with Parker Hanfin. And Parker Hanfin obviously complied with that, and they won the order despite the fact that their price was 8% more than their competitors' price. You see, now the customer was not focused on the price of the good. The customer was focused on that specific level of customer satisfaction or customer service level. Now the customer demanded the service level to be a little bit higher, and when they did that, they won the order and they actually gained millions out of it. So for the same type of product, which is 8% expensive as compared to the other product, the customer, for the sake of establishing a stocking point in their region and with some additional services, they would give the order to Parker Hanfin for the same type of the product. So the thing is that with that service improvement, they gained millions of dollars. The point is, and that was around 30% of the cost of sales, but still they earn the profit. The point is that this objective, the service improvement, if that is the objective, then the whole logistics strategy is to be defined in order to fulfill that objective. We basically saw three different aspects, three different objectives: cost reduction, minimize the investment or capital reduction, and service improvement. Now once these three, one of them is being targeted, then the whole strategy would follow in order to achieve that objective. Now the logistics objective basically, or in all of these aspects, is maximize return on logistics asset. How would we calculate that? I said ROLA. It is not ROLA, the ROLA of Urdu, but it is return on logistics asset. The revenue, logistics contribution to sales, minus cost of logistics operation divided by investment in logistics assets. Now these are basically, it is the return on logistics asset. Whenever we have an objective and we define that objective and we do investment in that objective, and whether we gain or lose from that investment or from that objective, that can be calculated by this return on logistics asset. So the whole objective can be to maximize return on the logistics assets. Now this is the flow of logistics planning. Basically there are individual links of logistics system, individual links which we discuss, like for example facility location, operational strategy, inventory management. Facility location, we already discussed that it is very important that where facilities are to be located in when we are supplying, because there are different supply points whenever there is a manufacturing facility which is being supplied, or there are customers which are to be supplied with the product. So the thing is that facility location is very important. Now operations strategy, that what type of strategy is being followed in terms of operations. Inventory management, that how inventory is to be managed, it is whether it is just in time inventory management, whether it is there is a pull strategy or push strategy in order processing, so that inventory can be managed accordingly. What type of information systems, how materials, what type of material handling strategies and plans are made, because if it is for example petroleum goods, there would be different material handling plans. If it is for example glass or tools, or if it is like chemicals, different material handling strategies are required. Now then there is traffic and transportation, what type of traffic infrastructure is available in that area and what types of transportation modes are available. Planning and control methods, what are the methods through which the whole planning and control process is used, and the complete organization. Now these are individual links of the logistics. Together, when they move on, well, if we want to see the flow of logistics planning, all these input towards integrated logistics planning if you move towards the other side. Now all these together would represent integrated logistics planning. So all these activities might be looked upon individually, But the whole planning process needs to incorporate all of these things. We need to consider inventory and transportation and organization and its goals and operational strategies, and what type of material is being produced and is required to be handled, and what are the information systems and where the facilities are located. All these are to be considered together while making a logistics plan. So this is resulting into an integrated logistics planning. This integrated logistic planning is directly associated with business goals and strategies, and the business goals and strategies would define customer service levels and customer service requirements, and then they would again define the integrated logistics planning. You see, so now again this there is a cycle, you see, from, if I'm just talking about the top 3 boxes right now on the right side, on my right side: business goals and strategies, customer service requirements, and integrated logistics planning. Now business goals and strategies would be defining the customer service levels that are to be met. Now those customer service levels would be basically defining the logistics strategy and logistics plan, or rather integrated logistics plan. So in that direction, if we you can say again, the integrated logistics planning would further define the business goals and strategies going back, and those business goals and strategies would again come down and define the customer service level. So, and again the integrated business logistics would define the customer service levels, how those customer services are to be met. So this integrated logistics, which is a sum of all those individual links of logistics system, would be at the center. The business goals would feed it, and it would feed back to the business goals. Then similarly, customer service requirements would define what level of integrated logistics is required, logistics planning is required, and that again would give feedback to the customer service requirements. And then moving on, this integrated logistics planning would result into design of integrated logistic management system, how the system is defined. The design of the whole system would be through this integrated logistics planning, and then based on that there would be overall performance measures, that how objectively, how well the system is performing. Once based on the plan, the system is defined. Once the system is defined, that system is to be evaluated across time. When that system is evaluated, then those measures, we will discuss that later on in later lectures, that it can be based on the customer's satisfaction level, and there are different aspects through which we can evaluate different strategies. So that overall performance measure of that system would go back to the planning, would give feedback to the planning level where the logistics system is being planned. I hope you understand this flow of logistics plan. I don't need to repeat that, I guess. Now, the whole logistics strategy is there to answer 3 questions: what, when, and how. What is to be done, when it is to be done, and how it is to be done. You can consider that in terms of the inventory, you can consider that in terms of delivery of the product, you can consider them in any aspect. Now, there are different levels of logistical planning. There are basically 3 levels of planning. There are strategic objectives, there are tactical objectives, and there are operational objectives. And for those, there are strategical plans, there are operational plans, and there are tactical plans. Now, the difference between these plans is basically the time horizon. Strategic plans are basically longer than, for more than 1 year, usually. On average, they are greater than 1 year. And tactical plans are usually less than 1 year. They are in between the strategic plan and the operational plan. And operational plan are day-to-day based plans. These are, for example, daily or hourly based plans. Now, for these plans to be made, actually, based on these time horizons and based on the level of plan that is to be made, because operational plans are day-to-day activities that we plan, the plans that are required to meet the day-to-day activities, it may be hourly activities. In order to formulate these plans, actually based on the time horizon that they differ from each other, the source of information that required is also different, because for a strategic plan, which is a longer time horizon plan, or rather abstract data or abstract information is required, but for operational plan to be successful, accurate information is required. So for example, you might have an abstract information that the firm's products demand is going to increase in the future, and you plan your strategy based on that. But when we're talking about an operational plan, for example, if we need to, if it is day-to-day or hour-to-hour basis plan, then you need to know exactly on what time that product is to be delivered to the customer. This is the time frame, this is the transport network, this is the road congestion level currently. So if I, for example, even if it is Domino's Pizza, then the plan would be, once the order is placed, then you need to plan to reach that customer in 30 minutes or less, you see. So that is basically an operational plan. So to ensure the efficient and effective product flow through strategically planned logistics channel, that is the operational plan. The strategically planned logistics channel has already been defined. It has been defined that 30 minutes or less is the main thing. 30 minutes or less is the main motto of the Domino's Pizza. But how to do it at that given moment is operational plan, right? Now these are basically the main decision making areas when we categorize these plans into strategical, tactical and operational plans. Then in terms of the decision areas, these are the different types of decisions then that might be faced for a logistics manager. So now if you look at the extreme, the things written in red color, there are transportation, there is inventories, there is order processing, there is purchasing, there is warehousing, there is facility locations, all the aspects of logistics or supply chain. Now if you look at the level, there are a level of plan, strategic, tactical and operational plan, that they are written in blue on the top. So in each decision area we are going to discuss, for example, in transportation, the strategic plan would be to overall define the mode selection, what type of mode of transportation is to be used. For example, if it is for example road transport, or you can use the rail transport, you can use shipments through sea, or you can use air transport. Now these are different modes. So the strategic plan in the long-term plan would be to define that for this type of product category, or this type of, in case of this type of delivery time required, this category of the customer, or however you categorize your customers or products, then that is under the strategic plan, that what mode of transportation would be used. While coming to the tactical plan, well, no, let's go to operational plan first. Operational plan would be just dispatching. Right, that would be that once the product order has been received, you dispatch. You see, now the hourly or daily plan, the daily activities, that how you cope up with that. Now the operational plan, the strategic plan has already been defined. That let's assume that a firm decides that only air transport system would be used, right? So if it has been designed, now that is a strategic plan in terms of transportation. In the operational area, now today is just the dispatching. The order has been received, how to package, how to deliver it to the point where it is dispatched through air, you see, air cargo. Now there is in between there is tactical plan. For example, what is mentioned over here is seasonal equipment leasing, that from time to time, if we from time to time, the equipment that would be required to meet the strategic objectives through its daily operational planning. Anything, seasonal equipment leasing. For example, there is DHL, it might have its own planes. They might lease their own planes. Even airlines, for example, Pakistan International Airline would be also leases planes. It recently leased, I guess, 3 or 4 A235, I guess some Airbus plane, a smaller size. They leased it from Emirates. You see, so that was a tactical plan. Operational plan for PIA, the strategic aim would be to let's expand to other regions. That has been defined. The intermediate, if we want to expand it, we need to hire more planes. And operational, let's get the customers on board and let's take them someplace. The daily based movements and activities, the aircraft fueling operation, the whole operations that are being managed. The aim is the operational plans are to ensure that the logistics system or logistics channel of the strategic plan is used. You see, these are the three differences. Then we come to inventories. The strategic plan would be the location and the control policies. Location, that where, what areas are we serving, so where do we need to locate. We would have more examples of location also. It is a very important aspect. In fact, we would have 2 or 3 lectures based on the location theory, the location concept of the warehouses and the factories and the production facilities and warehousing. Now these locations, there are actually many statistical tools and techniques also which are just to define the location of a firm, for example gravity model or least cost methods and stuff like that. Cost profit volume analysis, yes. Now if we're talking about inventories, we're talking about the location, then that would be a strategic plan, because if we are planning to serve, for example if we are a company in Karachi and we are planning to serve customers in Islamabad, then we need warehouses over there as well. We might need warehouses in Lahore, we might need warehouses in Quetta or in different regions or in KPK. The point is that those locations are defined based on strategic goals, which are long-term and long-term goals. So those strategic plans are whose time frame is greater than a year. They define the location of the inventories and they define the control policies, while the tactical plans would only define the safety stock levels that are to be maintained at different warehouses based on the demand of those goods, while operational plans would be order filling. Once the order has been received and how that order is delivered, the day-to-day activity or hourly activity that is moving through. Once the order is placed, the order is fulfilled. That is an order filling. So how that order is fulfilled, that is an operational plan. Tactical plan would be to forecast for like next 1 month or 3 months or 6 months and ensure that that specific stock level is available in the warehouses. And where to locate the warehouses is a strategic plan. I hope you understand the distinction. Then comes the order processing. Now, the whole system through which the order is processed, that system comes under the strategic plans. Order entry, its transmittal and processing system design, the design of that system, that how the order would be placed and where the order would go and how that order would be processed. That whole thing, the design of that whole thing comes under the strategic plan. But we don't have anything under it in terms of tactical plans, but when we come to operational plans, it would be basically processing orders and filling back orders, simple as that. Once the order has been received, it is processed. That is order processing for operational plan. Now then there is purchasing. The strategic plan would be for the development of supplier and buyer relationships, the broader aspect again. The tactical plan would be contracting and forward buying. Contracting for execution of contracts, and for example forward buying would be to buy in advance. All those would be coming under strategic plan. And operational plan would be expediting the process, the purchase process. Then comes the warehousing. Now in terms of warehousing, it is how to handle the equipment, basically the equipment that is required for the selection of the equipment, handling equipment selection, basically the broader aspect, that what type of equipment is required based on the certain type of our product, the material handling and the type of the product that we have. And then the layout design, what type of layout should be a warehouse, what type of a layout should a warehouse has. Now then the tactical plan would be the efficient space utilization, and then the operational plan would be order picking and restocking. You see, now once the warehouse has been established and layout has been designed, Based on that layout, the tactical plans would be, the tactical activities would be the efficient utilization of space, and the operational plan would just be that the location has been decided, the equipment has been decided, the layout has been defined, the space area in which certain product or item is to be stored is defined. So operational activity would just be retrieving the item from that location and placing and refilling it. That's all. Then about the facility location, I already discussed that facility location is a very important aspect. Then number, size and location of warehouses, that is again a long-term strategic plan. It is not operational, or it is not tactical. Obviously the feedback and data and information comes from tactical and operational activities, but the plan is a long term. Once a firm plans to establish a new warehouse in a certain facility, there would be costs incurred based on that. So a huge cost incurred based on that. So those facilities are defined in terms of long term objectives of the firm. For example, if you are, let's talk about cement. When you are planning to establish an industry of cement, or for example, those chips that are used, we call it bajri in Urdu, those are small pieces of rocks. So if you're talking about that, if you want to establish that industry, and if you want to establish an industry which would supply those chips in different regions, what would you do? Where would you locate? Do you understand that there are weight gaining and weight losing production processes? Weight gaining production processes are those processes in which the product actually, once it is being manufactured through different assembly line, it gains weight. If you break it up into smaller parts, it's lighter, but when you assemble it together, it's a bigger product. Weight losing production product is where the raw material is heavier than the end product. So in case of this gravel, the bajri thing that I'm talking about, in case of this gravel that is used in floors, in pillars and stuff like that, in case of that gravel, the raw material is a big mountain piece of a big mountain, the rock. It is crushed into those smaller pieces. When you're talking about the facility, where to locate the production facility, you do not locate it far away from that mountain, because if you locate it in Pindi and you go to Taxila and you break that rock, load it on a truck and bring it to this area, the transportation cost would be very high. So what you do is, when you set up the factory, your facility location is established at exactly the point where the rock is broken, it is crushed, then it is loaded in bags or in trucks, and then it is dispatched. And same goes for warehousing. You do not establish a warehouse near the production facility, just there are different aspects also, but once you need to store goods and services in order to meet certain levels of inventory. We would discuss them also again today, because there are cases where there are types of products which you stock a lot. For example, dawn bread might produce in the morning, it has an expiry date, but it might produce and stock based on the certain demand forecast. But a new trendy t-shirt might not be stored because it would go out of fashion and nobody would buy it then. There are different aspects in that, but holding everything else constant. When you establish a warehouse, you need to consider that what areas are to be serviced from that warehouse. You do not establish it randomly. There are again statistical models for that also. There is one very interesting gravity model, because if certain amount of volume of you can say good that is distributed along certain different regions, if you know the markets, if you know the GPS locations of those latitude and longitude of those markets, exactly where they are located on a map, you can define that this would be the center of gravity, where it would be the least cost method of locating that warehouse, where the cost would be minimal in distributing that good to all those locations. Well, I guess we would discuss that also. Now, moving on, there are 4 problem areas of supply chain planning. There is customer service levels that we are targeting. There is facility location. and there are inventory decisions, and there are transport decisions. These all four areas, I hope you remember that decision triangle that we discussed in few lectures. If you don't remember that, then go and play the recording again and you can see that again. But wait, I guess we have that coming again. It is not exactly the same decision triangle, it is a little bit different, but actually that was based on certain decisions. This is based on the strategies. That was location decision, inventory decision, and transport decision, but this is inventory strategy, transport strategy, and location strategy. Now all of these, basically the customer service level is something that has been defined extrinsically. Customer service level has been defined based on certain corporate strategy. Once that customer service level has been defined, the service goal has been defined, then the logistics department needs to meet that customer service goals through its location strategy, through its inventory strategy, and through its transport strategy. These and also this is some sort of a cycle, because all of these then contribute towards the customer of service level that has been defined, has been set also. Then when we're talking about the inventory strategy, we would discuss them all. We would have lectures based on inventory strategy, location strategy, and transport strategy, all these segmented areas. So this logistics decision making in inventory strategy, we would discuss inventory levels that are required in certain, because it is different in every different type of product. There are certain products that can be stored for a long time, there are certain products that cannot be stored for a long time. Now, stored for a long time in terms of the expiry dates on them, as well as stored for a long time in terms of changing taste and changing trends. You see, so you have to define the inventory strategy also based on that. So there are certain level of inventory levels that are required to be met. There is deployment of inventories, there are control methods, there is push versus pull methods. I hope you remember push versus pull methods. In one method there is you already stock. I was talking already about make to stock, or for example you just you get the order and then you produce. Basically in push method you forecast and you stock then, and in pull method you wait for the order and you get the order and then you produce and stock. Now then there is transport strategy, there is mode of transport. So the most important, that whether it is air or air cargo, it is land cargo, it is sea shipment, or it is in land, there is trucking and there is railroad carriage also. Then carrier routing and scheduling, that how it is to be routed, through which would be the least cost routing method, and when it is to be scheduled, because based on that scheduling you also need to consider the shipment size consolidation, because in certain types of products customers order those products in smaller batches. Now if they order products in a smaller batch, it would be very costly to transport them one by one. So what is necessary is that you package those, you consolidate all the shipments and deliver them. We'll discuss that in terms of another aspect also, customer service level also, because if you wait to package all them together, consolidate all your shipment together, then your delivery time would increase and the customer service level would go down. Still, there is location strategy. In terms of location strategy, number, size and location of the facilities. There is assignment of stocking points to sourcing points. Assignment of demand to the stocking points. Assignment of stocking points to the sourcing point is that from where the product is, if you have multiple manufacturing locations and if you have multiple warehouses, you assign certain sourcing point from where the product is originating to a certain stocking point, and then you also assign certain stocking point to the certain point of demand. When there is a demand from the market, then that demand from that specific area is to be met from this stocking point. Then there is also a choice between private and public warehousing. Now all of these, when looked together, all of these focus on specific customer service goals. You can also say that they actually somehow, either the customer service goals are defined through them in certain cases, and there would be cases where customer service goals are defined and these strategies are formulated. if you look at, like, when a firm is trying to establish itself in the market, if a new firm, a manufacturing firm, is coming into the market and it is establishing itself, there might be a possibility that the initial inventory strategy and transport and location strategy that they have would define certain customer service goals, and then they only need to maintain those customer service goals, whatever the level of satisfaction that they are targeting automatically, because when you're starting a business with low capital, you have certain limitations. Based on those limitations, your customer service goals are defined through within your limited brackets. But once you are a big company like Domino's or Pizza Hut, or for example Pepsi company or Amazon.com, then you can define your customer service levels, and then you can revamp your inventory and transport and location strategies based on the customer service level that you are targeting. For example, if you define 30 minutes or less deal in case of McDonald's, or in case of for example Domino's, then you can adjust your inventory strategy linked to that. You can adjust your transport strategy. You can adjust your location strategy based on that. Then there are basically big question is that when to plan, when to consider, when to plan your logistics and supply chain strategy. The first idea is no distribution network currently exists, so you need to plan to formulate a distribution network or logistics network. Now there has been no, these are just basic rules of thumbs or guidelines based on which the logistics strategy is to be planned. Now number one is that there is no plan currently existing, so you need to plan. The second one is that the initial plan has not been re-evaluated for the last 5 years, then you have to plan again. You re-evaluate it basically. Then when costs are changing rapidly, especially transport and inventory costs, with the changing and dynamic environment, the cost of transportation is obviously changing, with changing in costs of fuel, with changing in transportation networks, with advancements in the technologies, with changing in warehousing costs. Then when there are significant changes, then you need to replan. Now then when the markets are shifted, there are changes in demand also. When certain product is getting out of the market and certain product is coming into the market, and for example if there is increase in the demand by the customer, for example due to certain reason, then you need to define your logistics strategy again, because these are the things that would automatically push you towards defining your strategies, defining your planning your making your strategic plans. Now another aspect is when there is change in product characteristics, when there are when the product is being changed, when there are changes in the specific characteristics of the product, for example, because that would require different strategies to handle that product, that might require different customer service level that you need to target. So when there are changes in that would automatically mean that you have to redefine your strategy. Now, when there have been a major policy shift in logistics, such as in price, customer service or investment level, we discussed that, because when there is a policy shift might mean that they have defined that the cost reduction strategy is to be followed, or minimum investment level strategy is to be followed, or the customer service level has been increased. Then you need to, if there is a major shift, then you need to plan again. As again giving you the same example that I have been, it is a very interesting example actually. 30 minutes for free. If Domino's suddenly defines, if this is corporate head that suddenly defines that you need to deliver a pizza in 30 minutes, otherwise it would be delivered for free. When that strategy has been defined, then that would automatically mean the whole logistics system is to be redefined. So there are so many aspects when we need to redefine our logistics strategy. Now we are almost coming at the end of our lecture, so I guess it would be useful to briefly go through what we have discussed today. basically the logistics strategy is basically what is done is that originally a corporate strategy is defined. Once the corporate strategy is defined, the strategies of different functional areas are also defined, and when we define the strategy of different functional areas, logistics is also a functional area, and for that logistics a strategy is to be defined also. Now the basic three objectives mostly through which the logistics strategy is formulated is cost reduction, capital reduction, and service improvement. Cost reduction is the one in which you minimize the cost, minimize the variable cost. You basically minimize the movement and storage cost of a product, considering a constant level of service for the customers. Capital reduction is to minimize investment in the logistics system. That would be to minimize the level of warehousing or inventory that is to be kept and stuff like that. So that would mean that you might shift your product directly to the customer. You might choose public warehouse over private warehouse. You might choose just-in-time inventory, or you might outsource the whole logistics system to some other contractor as a whole. And the third one is the service improvement. If that is an objective, then the cost would automatically increase, because higher service, customer service level increases the cost. Then there was ROLA, return on logistics assets. That is one of the objectives is basically to maximize, in fact all of these objectives sum towards maximize the return on logistics asset. Now there was the flow of logistics planning. I said that there were separate activities that are individual links of the whole logistics system, and all these actually while we're planning we don't look at these activities individually. It is very conventionally accepted to look at these activities individually, but then we lose focus. We need to look at a broader picture. We look at them all together, and then that is termed as integrated logistics planning. Now integrated logistics planning, actually business goals gives feedback to customer service requirement, that gives to integrated logistics planning, because integrated logistics planning is based on the customer service levels, and then this gives feedback to customer service level, and the business goals are defined based on what has been achieved and what cannot be achieved. Now this integrated logistics planning actually defines the design of the system, logistics management system, and then the overall performance re-evaluated, and then you go back to the planning phase. Now there we also discussed three levels of logistical planning: the strategic plan, the tactical plan, and operational plan. Strategic plan is basically greater than 1 year approximately. Tactical plan is like less than 1 year, and operational plans are basically hourly or daily plans or weekly plans. And we also discussed that what type of question we might have to answer in terms of strategic, tactical, operational plan in different decision areas. For example, we discussed in transportation, inventories, order processing, purchasing, warehousing, and facility location. Then we again came to the triangle, the logistic decision making triangle, and we said that the customer service goals actually are basically dependent upon, based on those customer service goals, we define the inventory strategy, we define the transport strategy, and we define the location strategy. And in the end I was explaining to you that when do we need to formulate a plan. The most important things that I highlighted over here was when costs are changing, when the cost of transportation and cost of inventory are changing, we need to we need to plan a strategy. When there is changing characteristics of the product, when there is changing demands in the market, whenever the dynamics of the whole system are changing, whether external or internal, whether it is like the product characteristics that are changing, whether it is the costs that are being incurred is changing, whether the external environment, demand for the product, whether they are new competitors, whatever the environment may be, the whole plan needs to be formulated. There were, I don't remember the name, Tabasco or something, there were like steak sauces by two companies, and when a new company launched a sauce, what the other one did is that they actually pushed the logistics system in the hyperdrive, and they placed its steak sauce on the shelves in every market. You see, now that was an aggressive strategy or proactive strategy. Now this type of that has actually, they had to plan all that. It was a tactical or operational plan, but the point is that that strategy was defined based on the changing environment. When the environment changes, the plan, you need to replan, you need to reevaluate your existing plans. Okay, so we would discuss further aspects of logistics planning in the coming lectures. Allah Hafiz.